Welcome back to News Center. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with our coverage right here in studio. And like I mentioned, I have with me George Musamali, who is a security expert. And we'll be having a very interesting conversation here in studio about the terror attack in London and as well as what happened here in Kenya about 5 days ago. So before we get into this discussion, police have made 12 arrests in East London in connection with Saturday's night attack that left at least 7 people dead and scores injured. And as Ken Aseka now tells us, there are reports that the so-called Islamic State has already claimed responsibility.
Move back!
Britain is still reeling in pain following the Saturday night terror attack that has once again left the country mourning innocent lives. And police are piecing together every bit of evidence to unmask the attackers and possibly their motive.
He's very much a member of the community, very family-orientated person. He's lived here for 3 years. The entire block's only 3 years old. We all moved in pretty much the same time. It's very friendly, very affable. Again, there's nothing untoward about him in that sense. His wife just had another child. Just a very pleasant guy.
During the attack, a van hit pedestrians at London Bridge area before 3 men got out and stabbed people indiscriminately. The attackers will later be shot dead by 8 officers who fired 50 bullets.
The situation these officers were confronted with was critical. A matter of life and death. 3 armed men wearing what appeared to be suicide belts. They had already attacked and killed members of the public and had to be stopped immediately.
Following the attack, British Prime Minister Theresa May has vowed a sweeping review of the country's counter-terrorism strategy.
Since the emergence of the threat from Islamist-inspired terrorism, our country has made significant progress in disrupting plots and protecting the public. But it is time to say enough is enough. So in light of what we are learning about the changing threat, we need to review Britain's counter-terrorism strategy to make sure the police and security services have all the powers they need.
Britain's opposition Labour Party suspended its national election campaign until last evening in solidarity with the victims of the attack. The Conservative Party also suspended campaigns yesterday, but the PM said it will resume today ahead of Thursday polls.
We won't be campaigning nationally during today, but we'll be resuming later on because I think it's important to give a message that democracy must prevail. If we allow these attacks to disrupt our democratic process, then we all lose.
Several world leaders have so far condemned the attack and condoled with Britain. Through his Twitter account, US President Donald Trump told Britons not to be alarmed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to stand with Britain in defeating the attackers.
In recent hours, another terrible attack was launched on innocent people in the heart of London. We condemn it. We send our condolences to the British people, and we pledge our commitment to fight this scourge that knows no bounds.
The attack comes barely 2 weeks after the Manchester bombing that left at least 22 people dead. And with the Islamic State having claimed responsibility for the attack, the focus will now shift to the PM to see if she makes good of her words to have sweeping counter-terrorism reforms and strategies. Ken Aseka, KTN News.
All right, so that is what happened in London, and I want to bring in George Musamali, a security analyst and expert. Thank you very much for joining us on News Center. So it's quite shocking that we've had these attacks, about actually 3 in the last about 2 months in the UK. Is it shocking to you, first of all?
Yes, it's shocking because UK has one of the most sophisticated police services in the world. And this to happen in the streets, like in 3 months, we have 3 attacks. Lives have been lost, though the reaction after yesterday's attack was very swift and very encouraging.
Right.
But still, you'll find that we have grey areas that need to be addressed now when it comes to matters of counterterrorism. Counterterrorism is about prevention. It's not reacting to. So it seems at some point, Britain had lowered her guards, and this is why we're having these attacks taking place.
I mean, Westminster and then Manchester and especially between Manchester and London, it's just maybe about 2 weeks, if I'm not wrong. didn't they learn? I mean, you'd expect that, security would be heightened across, the whole kingdom after that attack in Manchester.
Betty, it's difficult to deal with this kind of attacks. We cannot step on because these are low-tech attacks, and when it comes to the planning, there are no operational planning, and it's very difficult for you to see any indicators that people are planning these kind of attacks. Remember, this was very simple and very brutal, and we look at the tactic that was being used, and it tells us very clearly that terrorism is evolving, and the security agencies need now to also evolve to deal with this kind of attacks that are coming out. Remember, we did not have any planning, and this is homegrown terror. These are people that have grown up in the UK, whereas the UK was looking for enemies outside her borders, whereas the enemy was within. And this is why these attacks are taking place. And remember the simplicity. Everything is very simple. You hire a van, drive it on the road. Nobody will suspect that you're going to use this van as a weapon. Don't use guns. Getting guns is a little bit complicated. Use knives. This is the rallying call for ISIS. You don't need to come to Syria. Use whatever you can, but carry out an attack. Very difficult to stop.
Does that mean that these terrorist groups have largely infiltrated into, people who would be affiliated to them in countries like the UK now?
Yes, that is what is happening, and basically they're using the internet. Social media is being used to recruit people. Social media is being used to pass messages, and this is something that the countries cannot control. Remember, we always talk about the individual rights. You cannot infringe on this. And you'll find that what ISIS has realized is that calling people to go to Iraq for some kind of training is going to be very difficult because the police are always on the watch out. But if you pass these kind of messages and tell people, use whatever you can. Remember, one of the Paris attackers was actually on the watch list. And when he was killed, the electronic tag that was supposed to be monitoring his movement was still found on his legs, showing clearly that it's very difficult to monitor this kind of people. You can't know what they're planning to do because there's no operational planning taking place. So it's just waking up in the morning, going out and carrying these attacks. Very difficult to deal with, Betty.
Something that you said is that they were found on low guard because this, especially with the Manchester attack, the main guy who's been investigated and he was actually killed was on the watch list of police for such a long time. Then how is it that this person was able to, do something like what he did?
Betty, it's very technical, putting somebody on the watch list. Remember, to watch a person for 24 hours, you need more than 20 police officers.
But don't they have the resources?
They don't have the resources. Remember, Britain had a budgetary cut on security just the other year. And if you look at what was coming up yesterday, it's clearly saying that there were not enough policemen on the streets, no uniformed police to be monitoring people around the clock. And this is something that the PM has said she's going to address very urgently because it's not easy for you to monitor a person. He has been on the watch list, and probably his behavior did not show in any way that he was planning to carry out this attack. And I mean, what I say is that when you're planning an attack, there's that operational planning, and there are always indicators. But if you look at the simplicity of these kind of attacks that are being carried out in London right now, it clearly shows that it's very difficult for you to identify a person who is planning to carry out such an attack. And this is the danger that we are facing in the world right now. And as I've said, we should come up with better counterterrorism measures. Let us be able to stop this. Let's involve the community. There was that complaint in UK that the community was not being involved in issues of counterterrorism. And that is the undoing because you can't get information. These terrorists live amongst us. And it's very easy for us to notice a behavior that is not normal then raise the alarm.
And let's talk about the complexity of this because, George, you're dealing with somebody who has nothing to lose. He goes into such a place like the market that he went to, and he knows that probably he's not going to come out alive. So this is a person who's got nothing to lose. So does it really matter the kind of strategies that we put in place? If you're dealing with somebody who says, Sawa, if I'm going to be jailed, it's okay. If I'm going to die, it's still fine.
Let us remove the opportunity, Betty. And I would like to draw the example closer home. We've seen what is happening in London. We saw what happened in Nice. We saw what happened in Berlin. We are seeing the tactics are changing. It's only fortunate that right now, Al-Shabaab are still not using these low tactic methods. They're still using the old conventional way of terrorism. But if that rallying call comes to Kenya, then we're in trouble. We need to remove that opportunity because if you look at London, the opportunities were there. I think everybody was caught off guard. These are people that have been living amongst you. You've not been watching them. Then all of a sudden they're out there carrying out attacks. It's difficult, Betty, because we always look for indicators. The kind of training that we have, the kind of counter-terrorism measures that we have are always that we have the 5 steps of terrorism, and we should look at the second stage where there are indicators that somebody is planning an attack. If that is not there, then definitely we'll always be reacting to these attacks.
Okay.
And this is something that we should learn from in Kenya with what is happening in London. Look at our markets, look at our streets,
Right.
hawkers everywhere. Go to Kangemi, that flyover. There's a market on the road, next to the road. Come to town, we call it Landis Road, Marikiti. We have so many people trading along the routes. What are we doing in preparation to this kind of attacks? We should prevent. Let's not wait for it to happen, and then we start running around.
All right. Finally, before we wind up with the issue to do with London, does it mean that it's not only Kenya that has this problem of reacting to things, but it's actually worldwide with countries that are way above us?
It's worldwide, Betty, because I've said that terrorism is evolving. We were looking at the old conventional ways of carrying out attacks. We were looking at people carrying explosive into buses.
Right.
We were looking at people buying guns and getting into supermarkets and shooting people. But here we are looking at a situation whereby somebody will get into a van, plunge it into a group of people. How do you prevent that? And there's no indication, there's no behavioral change in this person. You're not monitoring this person. Look at a situation whereby you're being told, just get a knife, anything that you can put your hands on. So long as you kill a person or two, then we will claim responsibility. That is a win for us. I mean, this is becoming complex, and it's going to be very difficult for us to deal with. So we need now to start dealing with this ideological thing. How do we stop people from being radicalized? How do we stop ISIS from passing these messages
through the internet?
Through the internet? How can Google help us stop this? But so long as we're still having these open channels, then definitely it's going to be very difficult for us to stop this kind of terrorism that is coming up right now.
All right. Let's talk about what happened in Kenya about 5 days ago, and I mentioned it earlier. We had about, was it 7 or 8 officers?
13
actually,
13
lose their lives. From what happened, and there were very many questions about it. It was an armored vehicle, yet it was able to, it was exploded. Does that make sense to you? Because some of the officers say that they had questions right from the get-go about these armored vehicles that came into the country recently.
I mean, it depends on the use that you purchase these armored vehicles for. For example, for us, we wanted to use them in places where we have a lot of cattle rustling, in Baringo and whatever. So we did not envision a situation whereby we are going to use these vehicles in areas that we have explosive planted along the roads. And I think we need to look at the vehicles, their capacity, and what they were meant to be used for before we start now saying that, no, we bought the wrong
But isn't there somebody who should have done that before this happened?
That's why I'm saying there's somebody who should have done that before this happened, and we really want accountability. What happened before we went to purchase these vehicles? Were they suitable for this terrain? Were they suitable to be used in this kind of operations? If they are not suitable, then somebody should take responsibility about this, Betty, because it's not any other day that we start losing officers when even in vehicles that we expect to offer some kind of protection to them. And we say we let it pass. And it's usually in Kenya when these kinds of things happen, nobody is held to account. In fact, right now, everybody is quiet. Nobody is asking the hard questions. We need to ask the hard questions, and we need to get the answers. Plus, we should look at a situation where we're looking at the enemy within. How is it that these attacks are being very effective and successful? Targeting security vehicles alone. They are not the only vehicles that use these roads.
Yes.
Are we looking at a situation whereby our security services have been infiltrated? Are we looking at a situation whereby the Aminat, this is the Al-Shabaab intelligence wing, is better in collection of intelligence than our own intelligence services? Why are they having an upper hand? It means somebody somewhere is failing, and we need to ask these hard questions, and then we should get answers.
Okay. Finally, as we wind up, there are people who are saying that the president has not even come out to say anything about it, yet he's condemned the attack in London. Is it, the onus of the president to always come out and admit that, the security officials or forces have been attacked?
I mean, it's only natural, Betty. He's the commander-in-chief. And remember, we are not talking about one policeman, we are not talking about two. We are talking about 30 people within a spell of 3 months. London lost 7 and campaigns were suspended. We've lost 13 and more police officers, and nobody's even talking about it. We're still on campaign mode. Not even the commander-in-chief has come out and said, I'm sorry this has happened, send a message of condolences to the families. It seems like this is nothing to us. We are making it look like this is usual, this is normal.
Right.
And that is a wrong way of dealing with these things. Because at the end of the day, those hard questions that we'll want answered and asked will not come. And I mean, it will continue as life as normal. And I think this is not the right way to deal with these situations, because more lives will be lost and no action will be taken.
All right. Thank you very much, Judge Msamali, for your time and your insights on this.
Thank you.